August. And this episode is episode 28, and I'm focusing on that little bit of a transition feeling that we have when we move into that little gem of the month of August. So in New England anyway, and especially on the island, we are still in high gear, summer tourism, big vacation weeks. This is a Rhode Island holiday this weekend. It's called Victory Day, and it's a day that the state of Rhode Island, and it's the only state in the Union that celebrates the end of World War II. And so it ends up being a big day tripper day. We have a lot of Rhode Islanders who will come out for the day to enjoy the beach and the shops, and so that's what's going on this weekend. And to be honest with you, my husband and I usually stay home on that day and just let the tourists have the town. It's a big young people day too. We find out we have a lot of 20-year-olds that like to come out on that day. And so what I love about August is it is starting to mark signs of fall. Now, I'm an autumn girl. I don't mind winter. I mean, if I can stay in and I can stay cozy and I don't have to get on a ferry and I don't have to get on a plane, I could be pretty happy in my chair sitting and knitting and watching, a movie. My husband's definitely a summer guy, and we definitely do, we enjoy the summer, we enjoy the beach. But I love knowing that fall is coming. So things that are happening right now, our blackberries are in full bloom. I'm picking them every day. I'm bringing up a good sized bowl every day. And what I think I'm going to do is, my mom is coming. I think she's coming either Thursday or Friday for a few days, and I think I'm going to make a nice blackberry puree that I can add to club soda and lime to make a nice, kind of soda. Or I could add a little vodka if my mom would like a little cocktail. So I'm thinking about doing that. The tomatoes are ripened on the vine. We have local fresh corn on the cob. We have, zucchini in abundance. We are and the shellfish this time of year, we're going into, my dad used to say you eat shellfish in months that end in R. I mean, obviously we eat shellfish all summer because that's that's when people are out here. They want lobster, they want oysters, they want clams. But I always believed that when the water cools off a little bit, when you get into September, October, November, December, the shellfish is at its sweetest. It is, lobsters have already molted, they've shed their shells, they've grown into their new shells, they're thick, they're full, they're sweet, and they're juicy. So that's something I'm looking forward to. And we had a couple of cool days, cool mornings, crisp mornings, and good sleeping weather nights. And I've been knitting a lot of summer weight on a size 3, on a size needle, cotton blends, linen, bamboo. And as soon as that cool weather started, all I could think about was fall and winter knit. So we're going to get into that in a moment. Let's see, I'm going to get my glasses on so I can see what else I wanted to tell you. Oh, I still wanted to talk about that transition period from summer to fall. So I've already started putting cinnamon in my coffee. When I grind my beans in the morning, I'm putting some cinnamon in there. That's one of those first little loves I have, is that, cinnamon or pumpkin spiced coffee. Like I said, I just love fall. I just want to sit and knit. And I'm not the only one. I was watching a couple of other podcasters and a couple of Instagram comments, and I was hearing things like, well, I'm ready for the sun to go down at 5 o'clock so I don't have to feel guilty, so I can just sit down and knit. So it's that feeling of, we've got these big long days, and some people feel like they need to be really productive and maybe feel a little guilty if it's a nice day to stay in and knit or to sit in the shade and knit. And so I think our knitting community has that in common, that we want to get into our woolens, we want to get into our alpacas, we want to feel cozy, we want to snuggle in, and we want to knit. And today is only August 15th, I think, the 14th or the 15th, so we've got a long ways to go. But I am definitely having that feeling. I'm thinking about apples. We've been having wonderful peaches this year, and plums. So the stone fruit has been wonderful. But I'm feeling myself starting to think about apple crisp, apple crumble, apple pie, apple cider. So that's kind of where my head is right now. My mom is a summer girl, and I will honor that when she's here, and we will definitely do summery things. Okay, so what am I wearing? Okay, I have talked about this, I think at least 2 other episodes, and I think the episode that I really went into detail was episode 26, and this is a Rosemary Drysdale design. Now, I may have confused you with the names of this because it initially showed up in a collection put out by Taki Stacy, and then it said on the pattern it was called the leaf pattern. But when I went on Ravelry to try to find it to put it into my Ravelry account, I saw that Rosemary Drysdale is calling it the open work boat neck pullover. So if you are looking for the pattern, you can find it in Ravelry, you can find it in Lovecraft as the open work boat neck pattern pullover. So it's very comfortable. My husband took some pictures of me wearing it, and I'm inserting some of those photos. I love the drape, I love the hang. I have a little white silky satiny little tank top, not a tank top, but a little camisole on underneath it. I'm wearing it right now with, white linen slacks. I love this sweater. It fits beautifully. It's a gorgeous, I think, flattering. I think those kind of rib with that drop stitch going in this direction and vertically really adds for a nice slender look. The boat neck, I like a boat neck on myself. I am broad shouldered, but I'm also broad hipped, and I find that if I wear something that accentuates my shoulders and comes in at the waist, kind of offsets my hips a little bit. So I do love this pattern. And I can just see this in black or navy blue. I think, I don't relish working in dark colors, but I just can see this too. So maybe another year. Right now, I haven't even taken it out. We went out to dinner the other night, and I wore a short sleeve little linen top, and my husband said, "You're not wearing the Rosemary Drysdale," because all I have talked about is this sweater. So I'm gonna wear it eventually. Today is a little cool. Like I said, we're getting into a little bit of cooler weather, and so I'm looking forward to taking this out and giving it its big debut. Okay, so what is on the mannequin? I talked about this in my last episode. This is just a sweet story. This was, a YouTube follower who is becoming a fast friend. Her name is Barbara. Her and her husband Roger were out here for a visit, and it was just a glorious, wonderful day. And Barbara brought me this beautiful yarn, and I talk about this quite a bit in my last episode. But this yarn is Rich Hill Yarns, and the colorway is Mural by Andrew Hem. And Andrew Hem is a muralist and in the Virginia area, and so this colorway is named after him, Mural by Andrew Hem. These are fingering weight yarns. The white is, I think I said in my last episode that this was a Plymouth yarn, but it's not. It's actually a Valley yarn, which Valley yarn is Webb's yarn, and it is called Charlemont, and it's also a fingering weight. This is 70 or 75% merino, and then superwash merino and some nylon, and this is a similar blend. It's merino, it is silk and nylon, and the drape of the Charlemont is just beautiful, and it held up perfectly with the wool and the superwash wool. I have the fan going on right now, so I've got things blowing around. Sorry about that. I just want to get my notes back on track. So this was such a pleasure to knit. You start at the neckline. It's got this beautiful, this is the Alpine Bloom, and the designer is Caitlan Hunter. And it starts with this gorgeous lace pattern at the top, and it's mimicked again here on the sleeve. And I loved going from the lace to the color work and then to the simplicity of stocking knit. Top down, worked in the round. When you finish the color work, you're pretty much separating for the sleeves and the body. There will be a couple of rows of stocking knit, and then you will put your sleeves on a holder. And so that's what I did. I got to the color work. I tried it on a few times. I put the sleeves on some barber cords, and then I worked in stocking knit. Now I will say that in this Charlemont, you want to just be really careful of your tension, that you keep your tension under control, because I think every little thing, every little bump will show up in this. And I actually did rip it back because I made a little boo-boo. When I switched over my needles, I left one of the needle tips a size 3 and I moved on to a size 4, and it was apparent pretty quickly. So I just backed up and went, oh my goodness, I didn't change both my tips. I've done this before, not changing my tips. So I don't know why it keeps happening to me. I've really got to, I think, I don't know exactly why that keeps happening. Does this happen to you? Do you change one tip to one size and then not the other? I think that is a risk when you work in circular needles. I guess it's a risk with any needle, because I actually have done that working on straight needles too. So I have to really slow down when I'm transitioning from needle to needle. So anyway, beautiful, beautiful drape. You can see that. My husband took some pictures of me wearing this. I put it on with some jeans. I think it will be lovely with a pair of dressy wool, maybe like a lightweight wool slack, but it looked really cute with jeans. So you separate for the body and the sleeves, and then you go ahead and you put the stocking knit up to the stopping knit on the bob, of course, and you finish working the body. Then you work this lace band separately. So when you were starting at the top, you cast on, you worked the lace, and you went right from the lace into the stocking, into the color work. But on the sleeve, you actually will knit this lace band separately, and then you will Kitchener it on to the sleeve. So some folks decided to just go with a rib like we have here on the bottom. I wanted the lace, and I said, well, I'm just going to give it a try. I mean, let's just see how it goes. If I don't like the way it looks, because what I didn't want is I didn't want the lace to flare out. I wanted it to lay flat. And so I used the smaller needle just as I did on the neck, and it didn't flare out at all. And I think when you're blocking this, you just be careful not to stretch that lace out too much. So you hold I used magic loop on both when I was doing this. So I had my sleeve stitches on magic loop as if to Kitchener, and then I had the lace on magic loop as if to Kitchener. And there's a very good diagram in Caitlan Hunter's pattern that shows how to line up the stitches from the sleeve and the stitches for the lace so that you can Kitchener. So you Kitchener one side and then you Kitchener the other side. And it is absolutely a beautiful design element for this sweater. So I look forward to wearing this, and again, I thank you, Barbara, for that beautiful yarn. I thank you, Caitlan Hunter, for a beautiful pattern. Now this, I think, was originally designed to be cropped, quite cropped. I'm tall. Even though I had high waist jeans on when I tried this on, they weren't super high waist, but they were above the navel. I still like that. I can always tuck that in a little bit in the front if I want to, but I like having the option of having it just draped nicely. So I do recommend this pattern. I think you could very easily make this into a long sleeve and put this lace, down here. I think that would be beautiful. I have a lot of this Charlemont. I think I bought like 4 or 5 skeins of this, and it's over 400 yards, I believe, on a skein. And I also bought a variegated yarn when I was at Webb's as well that had some cranberries, and I'm gonna pull that out, and I'm thinking about that maybe for, maybe a holiday winter kind of sweater. And even if I don't do this exact pattern, incorporating this lace neckline and that little lace cuff on a long sleeve. So I give this a 10. This was a beautiful pattern, great knit, lovely yarn, beautiful memories, the day spent with Barbara. Okay, so what am I working on? Well, those days where the temperatures dropped, all I could think about was wool. And this was on a 3, I believe, and I've been working on some really fine needles, and I just wanted something a little bit more substantial. And I mentioned a little while ago that my sister-in-law she's a doll, she's a love, she's good to my mom, and she had asked me to knit her a fisherman knit sweater. So back in episode 2, like when I first started podcasting, I showed you a beautiful fisherman knit sweater that I made myself that was from a Candide pattern. You cannot find this pattern, but there are so many great fisherman knit patterns out there. So I started working on the sleeve, because I have made this fisherman knit too small for me. I've made it too large for myself. I've made it in a cardigan. I've made it in a pullover, and I've yet to get the perfect size for myself. I think I've made it in Cascade. I've made it in some other yarns before. I don't believe I've ever made it in the Candide. So I really want this to fit my sister-in-law really well. I want it to be an heirloom piece. It's a lot of, a lot of detail, a lot of work. I want it to hold up, which is why I chose Cascade 220, which is my workhorse yarn. And I want to get the fit right. So I really took my time measuring my sister-in-law, and I thought I would just start with the sleeve first. And I'm going to be showing you, I'm not going to show it to you quite yet, but I'm going to show you a photo of the three things I've got going on at the same time, because I want you to enjoy the beautiful colors together. But this is Olive Heather. Trying to let the light filter through a little bit so you can see. It's probably a little tricky to see with the camera, but like I said, I'm going to also show you a photo. So this is a in-piece pattern because it's a cardigan. So I have my first sleeve. I did not do the fisherman rib. I just did a regular rib, because when I did mine and I did the fisherman rib, I didn't care for the way the rib stood up a little higher than my pattern. I want my pattern to be the thing that really sticks out the most. So this is a combination of the Wave of Honey, Wave of Honey, which looks like a honeycomb. See if you can see that beautiful honeycomb. And also the Tree of Life, which is this pattern right here, and then the Diamond Bobble pattern. So these three patterns repeat at different rates. So the Wave of Honey repeats every 4 rows, and on the wrong side, it's a purl row. Very manageable. The Tree of Life, once you get the setup rows taken care of, it's only rows 3 to 8. So that's a 5-row repeat. The Diamond Bobble is a 24-row repeat. So you kind of have to keep track, and you can't put this in Knit Companion because, like I said, you can't purchase this anymore. But I made a grid. The original pattern had a grid. And really, once you get going, I don't need to follow the Wave of Honey pattern. I don't need to follow the Tree of Life pattern. I have to keep an eye. On the bobble cable, because I don't want to forget that there's a bobble on the outside, there are bobbles on the inside, and I want to make sure I keep crossing in the right place, because as you can see, it crosses in one direction, then it crosses in the other. I'm not using a cable needle. This yarn is pretty sticky. It's 100% wool, and the color is just gorgeous. So it's Olive Heather. It's a dark green. However, that olive is almost like a little lichen hair that kind of comes through and puts a glow right over the top of this pattern. I apologize, that was not one of the scheduled flights. That must be one of the private planes. I tried to plan this so we wouldn't hear all that. So I'm going to cast, actually I have cast on for the second sleeve. I've got my rib done, and I'm making the rib kind of long in case my sister-in-law wants to flip it up. And I'm looking forward to working on the other sleeve. And then now that I have a sleeve, that's what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about gauge. So it's, check the gauge in pattern. Checking gauge in pattern, depending on what the pattern is, can be very tricky. So I, instead of trying to figure out how many stitches am I getting to the inch, or how many stitches am I getting to 4 centimeters to 4 inches, I am now measuring from my widest point. I know exactly how many stitches I had on the needles at this point. So I'm going to measure this, so I know how many inches it will measure out, and then I know how many stitches I had. I will divide into that, and then I'll know my gauge, and I know what my gauge is. But by using that, I can then start to think about, across the bust, across the back of the cardigan pieces. This has a built-in, I believe it's a seed stitch, a built-in button band. So I have to take all that into account, so I make sure that this pattern really fits well. The good thing is, all of the increased work is done in stocking, is done in seed stitch, so I can modify as I go along. You know, I want to make sure there's plenty of room across the bust. Because this is a cardigan, I'm sure she's going to wear this very much like a jacket. So, you know, she's going to have a turtleneck and maybe a second, you know, a turtleneck and maybe a second piece underneath it. So I don't want any pulling. I don't want those buttons to pull. I've had that problem. One time when I made it, I put pewter buttons on it, and you know, that seed stitch band didn't hold the pewter buttons up well. My goal here, I've used leather, makes it a little tricky to wash. My goal here is I'm going to use wooden buttons. So, okay, so you saw that beautiful green. We've seen that gorgeous, gorgeous green. The next thing that I started to think about was Andrea Mowry's wool and honey pattern. I don't know if you've seen this pattern, but you've got to check this pattern out. It's a honeycomb. So you saw I had the wave of honey, those little honeycombs. That's what got me thinking about this pattern. So, honeycombs. And the honeycombs are getting larger, and they're getting not only are they getting larger because this is top down, but they're going to start to some of them are going to start to disappear as they get bigger. And eventually the bottom of the sweater will be in garter stitch and the sleeves will be in garter stitch. I'm in love with the color. I'm in love with the pattern. This has been, now you know I've talked to you about this. I can't wear a lot of autumn tones, but this yarn, and the color of this yarn is amazing. So this is a Brooklyn Tweed. So this pattern called for Brooklyn Tweed Loft. And I didn't care, for me, I didn't care for the colors that were available in Loft for this pattern for me. I wanted something that made me think of honey, beeswax candles, honeycomb, but not gold, not golden, not goldenrod, not an orangey, yellow. I needed something that had more of a blue gray undertone. So with that in mind, I looked at Brooklyn Tweed's yarn called Tones Light. So by the way, the yarn that was recommended is a fingering weight, and this is also a fingering weight. A tad heavier fingering weight. If you look at the grams and yards, just a tad heavier than the recommended Loft. So I want to tell you a little bit about this. So this is 225 yards, 206 meters. And it is a 6 to 8 inch stitch, 6 to 8 stitches per inch gauge on US needle 2 to 4. That's this yarn. And this is a woolen spun. It's a 2-ply. Now, if you haven't looked up Brooklyn Tweed, and if you haven't worked with their yarns, I highly recommend them because the yarns are sourced, spun, and dyed in the United States. This is American Columbia wool. So, the origin of the fleece is Wyoming. It's scoured in Texas. It's spun in Wisconsin. It's dyed in Pennsylvania. It was designed in Oregon. And it is a 1-color, 2-shade overtone, undertone yarn. So there are light overtones and dark undertones. So I'm going to see if you can pick some of that out as I move it around. The colorway is called Zest. Well, I mean, time will tell wearing it, but I feel pretty good about this. The undertones are like a gray brown, not an orange brown. And the yellow is definitely like the zest of a lime, of a lemon, and not like goldenrod. So it is very rustic, but it doesn't hurt my hands. I had to drop down a whole needle size because, again, the recommended yarn was a finer fingering than this yarn. But what I did not do, now I think like 3,400 people have made this on Ravelry, and a lot of people talked about that the neckline was a little tight. Now I don't love a tight neckline. You know, I'm usually wearing a boat neck or a turtleneck, like a loose turtleneck. But I did want this style. So I used a US 3. Did I use a US 3? I used a US 3 on the neck, and I stayed with the US 3 for the body. I don't know what I'll do when it comes time for the rib and the rib on the body, on the hem. Maybe I'll go down, I will see. This is a boxy design, and it is designed to be a cropped and a 3/4 sleeve. I am not gonna make it cropped. I'm not gonna make it long, but I don't want it too cropped. And I want a long sleeve, not too long, but you know, maybe like this. So things I have learned about this pattern. I use Knit Companion. Oh my goodness, I'm at 25 minutes already. I don't know. I hope you're okay. I haven't even gotten into my third project, but okay, so let's get back to this. Things I have learned. I use Knit Companion almost all the time, unless I'm using one of my old Vogue magazines or one of my old patterns. If I'm buying a new pattern, and especially if I'm buying it on Ravelry, I will definitely upload it into Knit Companion. I love it. I love that I can, you know, expand. I like that I can keep notes. I started with so for those of you who don't know, Knit Companion is a knitting software program, and you can get the app. You can get it for free initially. You can get it for free. If you just want to keep track of the pattern, you don't want a paper pattern, you can look at pages, you can have counter going, you can count rows. I think there are 3 different counters. There's a lot you can do for free. I used it for free for the first year, and then I did upgrade it, and it's a minimal cost per year. I upgraded it because I was doing more and more complicated things that required, like that fisherman knit. Had that been a Ravelry pattern, I would be so happy because I would be able to keep track of 3 different patterns that that have different pattern repeats. You could also, once you buy the pattern, you can put in some notes. For instance, if you can't remember, like I can't remember, every time I have to make one right versus make one left, am I going into the back, am I going to the front? I have a mental block. I'm a bit dyslexic, and every time I have to do a left-right thing, I just have a complete blank. So if you purchase, and I am not being sponsored by Knit Companion, but if you purchase that the upgraded software, you can type in that note for yourself so that every time you get to that part of the pattern, there it is right there, and then you can go, oh. Same thing like maybe with Kitchener, maybe you keep forgetting how to do the Kitchener. You could put things like that in there. So 90% of the time, it has worked perfectly for me. Maybe even more than 90% of the time. For this pattern, I got messed up, and I got messed up because the pattern that Andrea wrote is separated in size categories, and it goes extra small to medium to extra large in this set of directions, and in this set of directions it goes small, extra large, XXL. So it doesn't go extra small, small, medium, large like you're used to seeing in parentheses. And I thought I was following my size, but what started to happen as I was moving my pages back and forth, and sometimes I would get out because I would go back to take a look at the pattern, picture, the photo, and or maybe I wanted to go back and look at the gauge again. When I would come back, I got off my size. And I went from making this in a small, and I spent a lot of time swatching this because I knew I had a different gauge going on. I knew that from reading people on Facebook that I did not want my neck too tight. I knew I didn't want it too loose and boxy, and I knew I wanted to make it long sleeve. So I spent a lot of time gauging this, doing the gauge swatches. And so at one point I was like, I don't have a needle long enough to hold all these stitches. I had a connector on, and I kept saying to myself, okay, well, we're going to be putting off 2 sleeves, and I know it's boxy, but I just started getting concerned. Every time I came to another increase run, I'm like, I just can't increase this any longer. So I put the bobbin cords on, I tried it on. You know, it was hard to tell initially because it's over your shoulder, so I went a little further. And when I got past my bust area, I'm like, this is going to be huge. What went wrong? What is going wrong? If I got a good right gauge, I don't understand. What I did is I slipped off my size accidentally when I was changing pages in Knit Companion, and I ended up in a whole nother size. And so I ripped back, and because this is 100% wool, I was spit splicing instead of weaving. I didn't want to have to weave my ends, and we talked about, you can bring your new yarn and your old yarn together, and you can wet that, and you can. So I've got this massive ball of yarn. I ripped back to where I knew I was at my right size, and I'm reworking it at the correct size. What I will say is I really didn't mind having to do that. The yarn is not too crimped. I love this pattern. I'm enjoying the knit. I'm enjoying the color. I'm on my Addy Turbos. I've got my pretty little stitch marker from Katrinkles that was custom made for Northlake Fiber. Visually, it is delicious. It's delightful to knit on. So, but I didn't want you to make that same mistake. My cousin is also making this, and she was noticing that I'm on row 10 of what page, because there's a row 10 on this page, there's a row 10 on another page, and it doesn't go extra small, small, medium, large. It skips every other size to a completely different set of directions. So I recommend the pattern. I love this yarn. Be very careful. I ended up printing it, and then I went through with a Sharpie and just crossed off everything I don't need so that I stay on plan. The other thing I learned, because I did look at a couple of other people who made this, is, so for my size, when I do the separation for the sleeve and the body, I'm going to have to, back cable, cast on, stitches underneath the arms. And I think for my size, it's like 8 and 8. That's another 16 stitches. I don't know if I want to do that. So what I might do is when I get to the point where I'm going to separate, I might start working a sleeve and just see how I feel about my sleeve fit. Maybe I want it in my sleeve, but I don't think I'm going to want it here because already it's going to be a loose. I think there's like 5 to 9 inches of ease. That's why I went down. That's why I wanted to go down a size. I did not want 9 inches of ease. So the other thing I learned is that what I'm probably going to do is once I get figure out what I'm going to do, how many stitches, if I'm going to cast on any at all, I think I'm going to, on each side of the sides, I might decrease 1 stitch on each side every 3 or 4 rows, and just give me a little bit of this so I don't have that real loose, especially in the back, that boxy, loose look. So that's what I'm working on. And I was going to tell you about a third project, but I'm already at a half an hour, so I think I'll save it for next time. So how did I want to wrap this up with you? I just did want to say to you that my mom is coming out, so I haven't made the cake yet. I'm holding off to make that beautiful ice cream cake when she comes here, so hopefully you'll see that in my next episode. But we did just have my Dave's niece and nephew rented a house out here for 2 weeks, and they have children, so our great niece and nephew were here. And we had them overnight one night so that their parents could go out for a nice dinner, and we had just so much fun. I think my nephew is about to go into, our great nephew is about to go into kindergarten, and my nieces, I want to say 10 or 11. They're both beautiful. They are the most incredible, fun kids to hang out with. So they came out, we had a pizza party, we made our own pizza, we played some games, we played Uno, we watched Finding Nemo. The next morning we got up early and we made chocolate chip pancakes and blueberry strawberry pancakes, and then we went out into the secret garden and we set up our little artist colony out there, and we sat and we painted and we drew, and we just had the most incredible with children, to have a meditative, creative moment like that, that was just a gift for me. My husband and I don't have children, so it was a special time. So I'm showing you a picture of that, and then with Ava and her parents' permission, I am showing you a little dress I made her when she was much younger, and because I wanted to tell you about this pattern. So this is a Valley Yarn pattern. It is called the number 455. It's the Isabella dress. I made it with Valley Superwash DK yarn. I gave it to her for her birthday one year, and I'm going to end this episode with her in the little dress and a photo of them in the secret garden. And I want to wish you a beautiful August, and I'm sorry this went a little long. Next time I'll catch you up on my progress of these projects, and hopefully maybe we'll see Mom in the next episode. Alrighty, you take care, and I'll see you soon.